Hello, we're here with Laurie Jean. She is the author of Crave, Sojourn of a Hungry Soul, and she is the chair, the endowed chair of English at Hampton College. And Laurie is one of our most charismatic and successful authors at Etruscan Press. We're very proud to have her. And I'm going to ask Laurie just to talk a little bit about her process and how, from the writer's point of view, how she went from ground zero, so to speak, just starting writing all the way through the process of publication.
Okay. Well, ground zero would just be being a young girl who loved words, who found healing in words, who found power in words. And so as a little girl, I always ran to books that I thought maybe told stories that spoke my traumas, my experiences, my joys. And so their passion was already there, just in the word and reading. But like a lot of people who love words, I didn't do anything with it for a long time except write in my journals and try to just capture everything that I experienced, because I kind of had a feeling I would need it later. It wasn't until I got into the end of my undergraduate career, because like a lot of people, I elected to be an English major, but I understood that if I wanted to be an author, I might need a side job as well. Teaching is that side job. I fancy myself an author. And I went through the program, though not really writing creatively unless it was for a writing assignment in class. And that's actually where Crave began. It was a writing assignment during the second year of my undergraduate, where we were asked to write a story about our families. And I remember I wrote The Ties That Bind. And that actually, of course, in a very different version, ended up in Crave. And I wrote that. And so that was just the beginnings of me being able to see I can actually tell this story, even if it's just a little bit at a time. Now, once I graduated from undergrad, I was instructed by my professor to not go forward immediately for the MFA. He thought that it would be beneficial for me, but he also was he was very realistic, and he said, it's going to be very competitive if you want to be a professor at a university. You are a woman of color. At that time, I was living in Tennessee, and things were very different then. And so he recommended that I go on for the PhD. And I did do that. He also recommended that I do the PhD and go back and get that MFA, because he knew that there was nothing like getting that experience. And I would just tell you all now, for those who have been in PhD programs, you probably can attest to this in the same way. My MFA was much harder than my PhD in so many great, wonderful, rich ways. And I did do the PhD so that I could get the job that I wanted at the time. But I tell you, where I really learned, where I really grew, where I really stretched was in my MFA program. So I actually finished my PhD, and right after I defended my dissertation, on the way home, I decided I was going to enroll in an MFA program. And that's what I did. And that is actually where I wrote the bulk of Crave. As I stated, when I was in classes during my undergraduate and graduate career, I didn't really write as much on paper, but I was writing in my mind. I knew all of these stories that I wanted to tell. Once I got into my MFA program, as I'm sure many of you have been able to see, when you get around like-minded people, when you have those professors that inspire you, and you're able to kind of tap into so many different parts of yourself with all these tools that you have gained from your professors and the instruction that they're giving, it just opens your world up. And so that's what happened to me. When I got into that MFA program, everything that I had been storing through my undergrad and through my MA and PhD program, it kind of just came out in that MFA program. And I want to tell you, when I talk about passion, and this is what you need to do because you can't do anything else. I was in that program for 4 semesters. It was a 4-semester program. And my entire goal in going into it was to get this book out of me. And at the time, the book was called Have a Little Piece of Me. And I just want to say that I was teaching an overload at a university, and an overload was I was teaching 5 undergraduate English 101 courses, or those, college writing courses. I was a mother of 3, and nothing could stop me from writing, because no matter how pulled I was in all of these different directions, I always had to come back to that page, because it was my sanity. It was what kept me feeling like me. It was what inspired me. And so, that is where the book came out, with the instruction of the advisors that I had. At the time, I had Rigoberto Gonzalez, Sue Williams Silverman, Laurie Alberts, and they were very beneficial to me, because they knew I had the passion, but I wasn't a great writer. I wrote in an academic way, because that is what I have been doing, and they really had to kind of push me to get more lyrical. They had to push me to show more than I was telling. They had to push me to really tap into those experiences. And I know that professors at Wilkes charge you all to do that all the time. Professors all over in MFA programs, they charge their students to do that. And so when you are stretching that way, you really see what you're made of. And I was able to successfully get that book out of me by the time I graduated. I wanted a draft, and I had a full draft when it was time to turn in my thesis. And then it sat for a long time, because, again, like many graduations, it's really anticlimactic. You get out and it's like, now what do I do? And at the time, I was still growing in my academic career. I was still, teaching overloads. I had a lot of different responsibilities at the university. I had responsibilities outside of the university. And so it sat. And every now and again, I would go back and dabble with it and try to play around with it a little bit. But, it was never anything that I felt that I could present to someone. And I sat on it, and I would play with it a little bit, and I sat on it. And then I had, a friend, him, Tim Siebels, a friend who was just like, you know what, Laurie, why don't you, I've been working with Etruscan, and they've been amazing. And, I think you would really vibe with them. Why don't you submit your work to them? Because, I think you're a great writer, and I think they would really like it. And I love Tim so much, I did not want to embarrass him. So I was like, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to revise it and send it to them first, because I don't want it to be a mess. And then you kind of, recommended me, and now you're embarrassed. And so I started revising it. And let me tell you all, I sat on that thing for a year. A year. If you can believe that, this is how quickly time passes. That you think, you're doing the work, but when you don't believe in yourself and you won't take a chance on yourself, when you let those opportunities go, you never know. I always say, if you don't submit, it's definitely a no. But if you do, there is just that possibility. And so I sat on that thing for a year, and then Rigoberto Gonzalez, who was my former advisor, he came to my university to visit and speak to our students. And he was like, Laurie, whatever happened with your book? It was one of the best, theses that I've read. And, what are you doing with it? And I'm like, well, he knew Tim as well. And I said, well, Tim, got me in contact with his publisher, and they wanted it. And then I started revising it, but I didn't want to embarrass him. So I'm still revising it a year later. And he was like, no, look, you need to get it together. He was always very blunt. You need to get it together. And if they said, they'll look at it, send it. What are you waiting for? And I decided that I was going to do it. And I had to send an email to Tim saying, hey, I know you kind of connected me last year, but, time kind of got away. Do you think it's okay for me to send it now? And the person who was here was Jackie, who was there when I first spoke to her a year before. And Tim had spoken to her. She was gone. And Tim was like, Laurie, I don't know if it's going to work. She's gone now. I know she told you yes, but, that she would look at it, but she's gone. And he said, but let me check and see who's in charge of getting the queries now, and if they'll be willing to accept it. They will be willing to accept it. So that was a hard 2 or 3 days waiting to hear. And I bet he probably heard back sooner, but he was like, I'm gonna make your butt, squirm because you waited a whole year. And he emailed me back, and he gave me, I think it was your email address, and said, hey, they said they'll still take it. I sent it the next day. I sent it that day. Because I did not want to miss that opportunity again. And you want me to just tell the little story of how you...
That's right.
It makes me cry a little bit because, and I had sent it out to other places as well, but I hadn't, I had just sent it out because I figured if I was sending it out to one, they always say if you're sending out to one, send out to many, because why not? If you've already done the work, just do the work for several of them, and you got more of an opportunity maybe to see if you'll get picked up. And so I sent it to publishers and to possible agents. But it was maybe a week or two after I sent it to you. I can't remember. It was pretty quick because I wasn't expecting it. And I was in my car. I just gotten this new car and I didn't know how to work it. The cars when your phone is hooked up to the speaker, the Bluetooth. I know right now it's commonplace. So people are like, how freaking long ago was that where you didn't know how to work your Bluetooth? It wasn't that long ago. I was just kind of behind the times. But I just got this new car, and the phone rang, and it picked up on my speaker, my Bluetooth speaker. And it was a New York number. And so I didn't know anybody in New York really, but I heard my daughter was in the back seat. I had just picked her up from school. And I answered, and I hear this voice. And, we're asking, is this Laurie Jean Kennedy? And I'm like, who is this, a bill collector or something? And he said the author of Crave, no, not Crave, Had a Little Piece of Me. And I was like, yes. And I'm sitting there, and he said, well, I wanted to talk to you about your book. And I'm freaking out because I'm like, oh my God, he's going to tell me it's not good enough. And my daughter's in the back seat listening, and she's going to be like, all these freaking years you've been in that office working on this book, and it didn't make it, So I was just so devastated that my daughter was going to hear me be rejected, like over the speakers in the car. Right? And so I'm freaking out a little bit, and but I didn't have to freak out too long, because as soon as I said, yes, it's me, Phil said he loved it. And it will always be a wonderful memory, because my daughter's reaction and her face afterwards, and she was crying, when I look back, I'm getting emotional now. It just really, you have all of these different things that are pulling you in your life. And, and then you have this writing that is your life, that is a part of how you breathe, how you sit down and you make sense of the things that are happening in the world. And you hope one day, the real joy is getting the words out, but oh my goodness, just being able to get them out, and then someone saying, hey, we want the world to see them. That is such an accomplishment. And it's so validating. And so to have my daughter be a part of that and witness that with me, it meant so much. And I'm just going to add, that was just the acceptance part. But the true journey, and that's why I'm so very grateful to Etruscan. And I think as you all consider either going into the publishing industry or becoming authors, I think it's so important to get with a publisher or an organization that is intent on building their people up. Not just putting you in a box and saying, this is your job and this is the only thing you do. And you can't know anything about what's going on over here, over there. One of the things that I loved about Etruscan is I learned so much about publishing, from what the copy editor, the proofer, to the cover design person does, to what Phil as the executive director does. I learned how to revise. I learned how to edit from Bob Mooney, Bill Schneider. I learned every aspect of the publishing industry. And I thought I was just an author, And I did that not because they were asking me to do different things, but because they were giving me access to those places. And it was, I'm telling you, it didn't just change my writing, but it changed the way I think about the publishing industry. It changed the way I teach. So when I go out and I teach my students, you know, a lot of programs we focus on just making sure we churn out good writers, but there are so many great writers and not enough great publishers and great agents and great editors that we see in the spotlight. And so this was it was like I was back in school again, learning, and I didn't anticipate getting this information. And so I would say that that was my publishing industry and my journey into becoming a published author of a memoir. But that just began my journey in the publishing industry. And now that I'm the Mellon Foundation Endowed Chair of English and Foreign Languages at Hampton University, it truly informs the work that I'm doing there and what we're trying to do as a department and a school. And so I am so grateful for just the lessons that I've learned in that.
Laurie, that is wonderful, and I still, of course, I cherish that moment too. It was a wonderful moment. The part that you didn't tell was that for at least it felt like 5 minutes or so, there was just this joyous sound coming out of the car before we resumed conversation using language. So it you know, that certainly from a publisher's point of view, those moments are the ones that we really cherish. When someone comes to us that we don't know, and you know, and suddenly you make this discovery, certainly I think one of the great joys is the feeling that you have brought a person that you had not known into an area, a network, you know, a flow where they will now continue to meet others.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk a little bit about subsequently, you're working on another memoir, a second book, which I've heard some wonderful chapters of, and some has been published, as a matter of fact, already. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, you know, I found myself in the same place that I was when I began working on Have a Little Piece of Me, which later became Crave. I'm at a point in my career where there's a choice, you know, one, because this new role that I'm in is taxing. You know, I chair a department that, you know, when I first got there, hadn't had a chair for 5 years. And they had one and he passed suddenly. He had just began the job. And then before that, they had interim chairs. So there was no stability. And when I got into the position, I had to create that stability for the department and get the faculty members to trust me. And you know that old saying about like the most dysfunctional, crazy departments in a university are English and the arts, right? That's not true. But people say that, right? And so, but our faculty are really wonderful to work with. They have been so supportive of me, but it is a lot of work because there's so many different moving things, and you have to manage people, you have to manage students, you got to manage the work, that, you know, the academic portion of it. And so my writing in my head has occurred, but as far as sitting down and really going on the page in the way that I need to, that hasn't. Now the book is written. The book is written in the same way that Crave was written after I got out of grad school, but there was still work that I needed to do because I wasn't in love with it. You know, like if you're gonna sell it, you got to be in love with it. And there are things that I have to go back for myself. Now, my agent says it's ready, and I believe her, but I have my own eye. You know, I have my own vision of what I want it to be, and I just went through a divorce, and so that kind of really put things on a hold, because when I wrote Crave and all of the different traumas that I had to recount, I kind of had that stability of, okay, I have a partner that I can go and kind of, you know, decompress with. And here, and for those of you who do write memoir, and especially who write memoir that has trauma in it, you know, you have to go back into that space, but you got to be able to come out of it. And because of the work that I do here, and because of just trying to focus on my kids and making sure that my daughter just started college, my middle son is in his second year of college, and my oldest one just got married and is finishing grad school. And so trying to make sure that they're all where they need to be, the physical revisions that I want to do now have to wait until the summer, which is grueling. But what I try to do is just be kind to myself. And, you know, when it's time, it's time. Just like with Crave, I let that whole year go and I regret that. But maybe it wasn't time. I mean, who knows? If I'd have submitted it, then it may have been rejected. I don't know. But and when it happened, it happened in such a grand way, and we've had such a great run with it. And I think that there's more to come. I truly do. I know this. It's just when it's time that it's going to come. And so in that, you know, interim, I just try to be kind to myself. It's not like I'm just at home and rolling over every day. Nope, not going to work on it and then rolling back in bed. I mean, I'm literally the chair of a department. I am the director of a couple of programs on campus, and I'm everywhere. Like I'm the chair of 4 different committees, big committees, university committees. And so it's not like I'm kind of lazing around. It's just, this has my attention right now, but as always, the writing is there and it is going to get the time that it deserves. That's why I go to places like AWP. That's why going to residencies and retreats are so important. Doing things like this are important because it connects me to the writing. So when I get done here, I'm able to go and look at, you know, the parts that I know I still want to revise before it goes out in the way that I want it to. And, you know, so I'm just kind of being kind to myself. And the other thing that I do is I have writing workshops with writers that I respect and love. And they are so, like, the word isn't unkind, rigorous. Like, they love me, but they're telling me, oh, you need to change that, or in such a loving and kind and authorly way. And so you know, that's the way that I stay connected to it.
Dr. Laurie Jean, so wonderful to have you here with us. And I look forward to getting together with you on the other side of this pandemic in person.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, please stay well, stay safe, and you're in our hearts.
Same here. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, are we cutting off now or?
Hold on. Let me just stop recording.
Oh, sorry.
I'll pause. Oh, okay. End meeting.